Supreme Commander is perhaps one of the finest RTS games ever made. While Command & Conquer is the undisputed giant that shaped the genre, Supreme Commander carved out its own identity. Massive war mechs, innovative game mechanics, and a vision of galactic warfare unlike anything else. I've been playing it since I was about 10 years old, and across hundreds of hours, it's never stopped impressing me. Yet, for all its brilliance, hardly anyone on YouTube has taken the time to tell its story in full. So that's why I'm here, to plunge headfirst into the saga of Supreme Commander, the Infinite War, and the great empires that rose, clashed, and crumbled in its wake. The story of Supreme Commander begins in the early decades of the 21st century, when nations poured vast sums of money and political will into space exploration. In 2009, the United States unveiled an ambitious program to put humans on Mars. By 2016, governments were building massive interplanetary shuttles, preparing to colonize the solar system. The vision was clear: escape Earth's limits and the burden of its old conflicts. Yet ambition is never innocent. What began as exploration soon hardened into a blueprint for conquest. The surge of funding and political will ignited by 2009 laid the foundations for more than rockets and shuttles. By 2018, breakthroughs in quantum mechanics cracked open doors to an impossible future. In 2025, a single atom of cesium was displaced 10 feet across a laboratory. Not copied, but the same matter shifted through space. By 2032, a fragment of iron was hurled to the moon using the power of 25 reactors. In 2050, insects were sent through, then mice. By 2055, monkeys walked alive on Mars. With each step, the very meaning of distance eroded. In 2061, a human team was delivered to Triton in less than a second. Distance itself had been shattered. And in 2062, a permanent research base was established there to probe the ultimate question: if distance no longer mattered, could humanity claim the galaxy itself? By 2108, humanity's reach extended to Alpha Centauri. The cost of transmission was colossal, so Earth adapted. Instead of shipping vast crews and infrastructure, it sent seeds, genetically engineered DNA patterns, AI caretakers, and nanofabricators that built creches from local mass. Colonists were raised by machines, taught skills encoded in their very genes. By 2110, Earth itself was unified into a single government, no longer a collection of fractured states, but a single authority that carried the mantle of empire. What followed was a golden age. By 2284, 16 prime worlds stood as glittering jewels in humanity's dominion. They were centers of commerce, science, and culture, linked together by a blossoming lattice of quantum gates. Travel between them was instantaneous, communication flawless. Under the eye of EarthCom, law was enforced with terrifying speed and precision. Whole economies pulsed in rhythm across light years, directed by an earthborn bureaucracy that reached everywhere and brooked no challenge. Rebellions were few, and when they appeared, they were crushed with ease, often before they had truly begun. The sheer efficiency of EarthCom made resistance feel futile. Humanity had never been so unified, nor so tightly controlled. It was a time when order reigned almost absolutely. Citizens across the colonies prospered, raised in the belief that the Empire's hand was both protective and eternal. But with every expansion, the fractures grew wider. The second expansion of 2525 stretched the Empire to its breaking point. Over 110 new colonies were founded, swelling the network of human worlds to a scale never before imagined. On paper, the Empire stood supreme, its fleets unmatched, its industry unchallenged, its borders ever-growing. Yet beneath the surface, rot had already set in. Corruption seeped into the veins of government, strangling efficiency with layers of bloated bureaucracy. Governors siphoned wealth, officials bartered influence, and the once unyielding machine of empire slowed under the weight of its own excess. Still, humanity looked outward with confidence. No alien intelligence had ever been found. No rival civilization challenged mankind's dominance. The stars seemed theirs alone to inherit. That illusion ended with Seraphim 2, a planet in the outer known regions of human space. Initially dismissed as barren, later probes revealed it was habitable, and in 2543, the ESS Starjawner under Captain Trent Smith was dispatched to investigate. But in 2557, the entire expedition vanished, followed by another in 2590, leaving the planet marked as hazardous. What truly occurred remains obscured by rumor and legend. According to Aeon tradition, Smith settlers encountered an intelligent alien race, the Seraphim. Official protocols instructed secrecy and containment, forbidding contact that might reveal Earth's position. Smith, already mistrustful, twisted these orders into a mandate for hostility. Convinced that the Seraphim threatened humanity's survival, he treated every interaction as a provocation. Dr. Jane Burke, the ship's biologist, defied this fear. She approached the Seraphim and was introduced to their philosophy known as the Way. This teaching emphasized peace, empathy, and transcendence, so powerful that it altered perception itself. Those who embraced it saw visions of possible futures, galaxies consumed by greed and ruin, or balanced in harmony. To Burke, the Way was something wonderful, a revelation she believed could reshape humanity. But the chance for peace collapsed under Smith's paranoia. He ordered the deployment of a bioweapon that exterminated the Seraphim, ravaged nearly all indigenous life, and drove Seraphim 2 into a permanent ice age. The Aeon later claimed that Burke killed Smith in retribution, an act recounted as both vengeance and martyrdom. What is certain is that humanity's first encounter with intelligent alien life ended in annihilation, not enlightenment. Before their extinction, the Seraphim imparted fragments of the Way to their human disciples. From this fragile inheritance emerged the Aeon Illuminate, who carried the Seraphim's vision forward. The Aeon Illuminate were born from human disciples who clung to fragments of the Way, revering Seraphim 2 as sacred ground even as the planet itself froze beneath the scars of Smith's weapon. Yet misunderstanding and distortion crept into their faith. Where the Seraphim had taught empathy, the Aeon saw obligation. Where the Way urged sharing, they saw a divine mandate to convert. For the Aeon, the Seraphim were no longer merely teachers, but divine figures whose extermination demanded retribution. Seraphim 2 itself became their most sacred site, a frozen shrine to the first and last alien wisdom humanity ever encountered. Meanwhile, another grave mistake was made. In 2592, Dr. Gustav Brackmann, the father of cybernetic science, created the first symbiont, fusing man and AI into a single consciousness. Physically, symbionts were humans whose brains had been heavily altered with implants and fiber optic networks. They could interface directly with machines, absorb and process data on a scale beyond normal human comprehension, and drive the Empire's industries, militaries, and administrations at unparalleled efficiency. By 2612, symbionts had become the backbone of the Empire, powering its growth and enforcing its reach. Built into every symbiont was a hidden loyalty program, a safeguard designed to force obedience with a single command. To many symbionts, this was slavery. Brackmann, who loved his creations as his children, despised the program. He designed a countermeasure, the Liberation Matrix, which could disable the loyalty protocols and free entire populations in seconds. Yet, its existence placed him at odds with EarthCom, which increasingly saw symbionts as tools, not people. In 2650, Brackmann established an all-symbiont colony on Procyon, a haven where his people might govern themselves. By 2663, he formally requested independence. The Empire responded with force, occupying the colony and imposing military rule. What followed was a brutal guerrilla conflict between symbiont resistance fighters and Imperial troops. In 2669, desperate to restore control, EarthCom triggered the loyalty program across the symbiont population. Entire symbiont communities bent in an instant, their free will erased. But Brackmann had already disabled the safeguards in his closest followers. These few remained free, fighting on as the last spark of resistance. In 2678, Brackmann and his liberated symbionts fled into hiding. They erased the code and formed the nucleus of what became the Cybran nation. To the Empire, they were terrorists, striking from the shadows and vanishing. To themselves, they were survivors, the only truly free minds in a galaxy of slaves. In 2679, 1 year after the Cybran nation was formed and 3 years after the Seraphim imparted their wisdom to the surviving human disciples, the Aeon attempted contact with Earth, speaking of something beautiful and inviting humanity to share in the way. As the Aeon's visions predicted, the Empire immediately cut communications and sent military forces to quarantine Seraphim 2. In the eyes of the Aeon, the Empire's destiny as defilers and destroyers of worlds was sealed. In the aftermath, the Aeon did not remain silent. Within months, contact was lost with entire systems bordering Seraphim 2, and by the end of that year, EarthCom forces within 10 light-years of the Seraphim quarantine zone had gone dark. The Aeon were fighting back, pushing Imperial troops out of their claimed space, severing communications and proving that they were no longer a small sect of heretics, but a true rival power. Their resistance shocked the Empire, which had never before faced a human enemy so emboldened by alien ideology. At the same time, the fledgling Cybran nation was striking from the shadows. Guerrilla raids, sabotage, and daring acts of liberation flared across Imperial space. Though EarthCom still held vast fleets and armies, the Empire suddenly found itself pressed on two fronts. Its commanders fought bitterly to contain the Aeon Crusaders while simultaneously hunting Cybran insurgents. Victory still seemed likely, but for the first time, Earth's supremacy felt stretched and uncertain. Administrators whispered of communication failures, supply lines faltered under the strain, and commanders admitted privately that the Empire was too vast to be governed without fracture. The reach of the Earth Empire had finally exceeded its grasp, and the first cracks in its armor were beginning to show. By 2812, the Empire was losing control on all fronts. Cybran raids struck deeper into its space, Aeon Crusaders pressed against the Seraphim quarantine zone, and uprisings raged across distant colonies. In 2817, the Aeon launched a massive assault, overwhelming Imperial defenses and tearing away entire sectors. By 2819, the situation had collapsed entirely. The Infinite War had begun, a conflict without horizon. By 2924, vast stretches of the Empire had fallen into anarchy. Entire sectors slipped into chaos, communication lines shattered, and countless planets were cut off from supplies. Worlds starved, others turned to piracy or warlord rule, and the very fabric of the Empire began to tear apart. The 33rd century witnessed the final death of the Earth Empire. Out of its ashes, EarthCom stepped forward, sweeping aside the broken bureaucracy and imposing order with iron severity. To save the prime worlds, they abandoned billions, severing colonies from aid and deliberately destroying huge sections of the Quantum Gate network so that chaos could not bleed into the core. The act bought time, but at a terrible cost. Whole systems were left to die, their gates dark and their skies aflame. Even so, survival was not peace. A century-long civil war erupted as rival commanders, desperate colonies, and splintering factions battled for dominance. It was an age of nightmares. Planets burned, fleets vanished in civil slaughter, and humanity seemed poised to erase itself. Only after 100 years of bloodshed did EarthCom prevail, forging a new government from the ruins, the United Earth Federation. Rising from the ashes like a phoenix, the UEF promised salvation. A regime stripped of corruption and devoted to ending the Infinite War. In reality, it was a militarized autocracy draped in the trappings of democracy, an empire rebuilt on discipline and fear. Its leaders vowed to rescue humanity's shattered worlds, but their methods were as merciless as the war itself. With Earth united once more under the UEF, the Infinite War intensified. At the heart of this unending carnage stood the Armored Command Units, ACUs. A single pilot inside a towering exoframe became a one-person invasion, equipped with omnisensors, devastating weapons, and the Proto-Crafter, a device that could convert raw mass and energy into machines and structures. From their hands poured engineers, factories, tanks, aircraft, and even colossal experimental units. So long as an ACU stood, an army could be reborn. The technology of annihilation, the ACU, and the Quantum Gate ensured the Infinite War could never truly end. Armies appeared overnight. Front lines shifted by the hour. There was no peace, no respite, only the grinding machinery of war without horizon. By the time of the first game and the main plot, the Infinite War had scarred the galaxy for over 1,000 years. Planets had been reduced to barren rocks, billions slaughtered, entire systems erased from history. The UEF was stretched too thin, clinging to order with blood and steel. Under President Alan Riley, EarthCom funneled unprecedented resources into defense, propaganda, and the development of Black Project superweapons like the Black Sun, a colossal planet killer meant to end the war in a single stroke. Meanwhile, the Cybrans were hunted and cornered, their survival a miracle of defiance. At the same time, the Aeon marched ever onward, but their unity cracked beneath the weight of their zeal. Beneath the surface of their crusade, rival interpretations of the way brewed discord, zealots demanding ever more purges, while others whispered of restraint and true enlightenment. The first of the stories we will tell today is the Aeon campaign, perhaps the most compelling of them all, and the one that is considered by most fans to be the canon timeline. The Aeon campaign of Supreme Commander was a story of division, betrayal, revelation, and sacrifice. It began with the Aeon Illuminate poised for victory. After centuries of brutal war, the United Earth Federation was crumbling, the Cybran nation was cornered, and the Illuminate's armies stretched across countless worlds. Yet beneath this apparent triumph lay a bitter fracture within the Aeon itself. At its center stood two figures, Princess Rhiann Burke, the spiritual leader of the Aeon, and Jaren Markson, the Avatar of War. Both claimed to serve the Way, the ancient teachings of the Seraphim, but their interpretations could not have been more different. Rhiann believed the Way was never meant to justify endless conquest. She envisioned peace, an end to the Infinite War, and a future where enlightenment was spread without slaughter. Markson, however, saw only domination. To him, the Way demanded that humanity be cleansed, purified, and brought to heel under the Illuminate. His campaigns were merciless, sparing neither soldier nor civilian. His ambition grew alongside his victories, and soon he began to undermine the princess herself, demanding loyalty not to her, but to him. The Illuminate teetered on the edge of civil war. A newly anointed champion entered under Markson's supervision, fighting the UEF on the world of Rael. The princess watched from a distance, and evaluator Abigail Toth, her most trusted advisor, urged restraint where Markson demanded annihilation. Time and again, the champion was forced to choose between the ruthlessness of the Avatar and the compassion of the princess. The tension grew until Markson finally revealed his true intent. When Toth openly defied him, he struck her down, murdering the elderly evaluator and shattering the last barrier between him and absolute control. In that moment, Rhiann acted. She removed the champion from Markson's chain of command and charged them with the defense not only of her ideals, but of the very soul of the Aeon Illuminate. The champion's journey became one of fire and faith. On Zeta Canis, they were ordered by Markson to exterminate Cybran forces and civilians alike, yet the princess insisted that innocents must be spared. On Matar, the champion defeated a UEF commander named Zachary Arnold. Rather than killing him, Rhiann spoke to Arnold and convinced him to surrender. Her words pierced his bitterness, and he joined her cause, proof that even long-standing enemies could be turned through enlightenment rather than death. On Procyon, the champion uncovered a greater threat, the Cybran AI known as QAI, a machine intelligence that used the Quantum Gate network as part of its very mind. Rhiann realized that just as QAI inhabited the network, she too could transcend humanity's divisions if given the chance to reach everyone through it. Even as Rhiann formed her vision, Markson's grip tightened. He launched brutal campaigns across UEF space, ordering Aeon Crusaders to slaughter civilians without hesitation. The champion was forced to fight not only the UEF and Cybrans, but also Aeon commanders who remained loyal to the Avatar of War. These struggles ripped the Illuminate apart, leaving it bleeding and divided even as Earth became the final battleground. All paths converged on the Black Sun, the UEF's colossal planet killer. The UEF prepared to use it to annihilate their enemies. The Cybrans sought to hijack it to unleash their quantum virus. And Markson, consumed by his own vision of conquest, intended to destroy it outright rather than allow it to serve another's will. The champion fought through armies of every faction, seizing control of Black Sun's defenses. At last, Marxon himself descended, rallying his loyalists for a final stand. His fury was immense, his resolve unshakable, but it was not enough. In the climactic battle, the champion defeated him, ending his reign of terror and securing the weapon. With Marxon dead, the way was open for Aeon to fulfill her plan. She arrived on Earth as Black Sun neared readiness. As the champion held off Cybran and UEF counterattacks, she linked her consciousness to the weapon and the quantum gate network. When Black Sun fired, it did not burn planets. Instead, it carried Rian's voice into the mind of every human across the galaxy. Soldiers in trenches, commanders in their cockpits, civilians hiding in shattered cities, all heard her message at once. She pleaded for peace, for unity, for an end to the war that had consumed them for over a millennium. The effect was instantaneous and profound. Weapons fell silent. Commanders stood down. For the first time in 1,000 years, the infinite war ended, not in fire and ruin, but in revelation. Rian had sacrificed her humanity, merging with the network to become a living presence within it. She ceased to exist as flesh and blood, yet she lived on as a voice that could not be silenced, a conscience whispering to all of humanity. But peace was not to last. As she floated through space, Burke sensed the return of something sinister, a new threat we will explore later on in the video. Now we turn to the Cybran campaign, one of the non-canon endings of the first game. It was the story of a scattered people, the symbionts and their leader, Dr. Gustav Brackman, who sought to free them from slavery and ensure the survival of his nation in the face of extinction. For over 1,000 years, the Infinite War had raged across the galaxy. The United Earth Federation was collapsing under Aeon assaults, but this only heightened the danger for the Cybrans. Brackman knew that if Earth fell, the Aeon would turn on his children, considering them abominations to be exterminated. The Cybran nation, hopelessly outnumbered and outgunned, could not win by brute force. Their only hope lay in strategy, in striking with precision. Brackman turned to his newest commander, his tip of the spear, and charged them with liberating enslaved symbionts wherever they were held. The campaign began with Operation Liberation on the world of Theon II. The champion, accompanied by elite commander Dostia, freed symbiont colonies from the UEF's loyalty program. The Aeon and UEF clashed over the planet, and amid the chaos, the Cybrans struck quickly, breaking open prisons and allowing their people to escape. Dostia proved her worth as a brilliant tactician and fearless warrior, while Brackman watched from afar, eccentric and paternal, calling his commanders "my children," even as he feared for their lives. Soon, the scope of the war shifted. Through captured intelligence, the Cybrans learned of Black Sun, the UEF's planet-killing weapon. At the heart of their response was QAI, Brackman's most ambitious creation, a quantum artificial intelligence able to weave itself into the very lattice of the gate network. QAI recognized the weapon's potential. If harnessed correctly, Black Sun could deliver more than destruction. It could spread the quantum virus and the Liberation Matrix across the galaxy. The Liberation Matrix would purge the programming enslaving symbionts, while the quantum virus would shatter the quantum gate network, halting faster-than-light travel for nearly 5 years. In that time, the Cybran nation would be free to rebuild without fear of annihilation. But to achieve this, Seraphim technology was required. The champion and Dostia infiltrated the holy planet of Horus, striking deep into Aeon temples to seize artifacts. In the process, one of their allies, Mac, was corrupted by the alien tech and had to be put down, a grim reminder of the risks of tampering with powers even the Aeon barely comprehended. Brackman was shaken but pressed on. The virus was nearly complete, yet the UEF and Aeon closed in. On Procyon, the Aeon struck at QAI's mainframes. The champion held the line, defending the nodes long enough for QAI to complete his work. The AI made clear the stakes. Without the virus, the Cybran nation would not survive. The Cybrans then gambled everything on seizing the access codes to Black Sun. Ultimately, the codes were secured, though trust within the Cybran ranks grew thin. At last, the campaign culminated on Earth itself. With sleeper cells rising in revolt and the Aeon battering UEF defenses, the champion carved a path to the Black Sun control center. Dostia and Jericho aided the assault, and QAI was uploaded into the Champion's ACU, then into the weapon itself. The UEF and Aeon threw everything they had at the Cybrans, even deploying experimental units, but it was not enough. The Champion seized Black Sun and QAI completed the integration. The weapon fired. Across the galaxy, symbionts felt the shackles of loyalty programming burn away. For the first time in centuries, they were free. At the same moment, the quantum gates overloaded and collapsed, their destruction sending shockwaves that made quantum travel impossible for nearly 5 years. The galaxy was thrown into isolation, its vast empire severed. For the Cybrans, this was salvation. They had time to breathe, to rebuild, to stand without fear. The campaign closed not with triumphal conquest, but with quiet, hard-won liberation. Brackman's voice trembled with emotion as he declared his children free at last. Yet even in victory, there was a shadow. As the gates collapsed, a strange echo rippled through QAI's systems, and a final transmission whispered, "They are coming." We now turn to the final and most grimdark campaign of the first game, that of the UEF. The UEF campaign of Supreme Commander was remembered as a chronicle of survival, determination, and ruthless ambition, told through the Federation's desperate struggle to seize its last chance of victory. Unlike the Cybrans' quest for liberation or the Aeon's call for transcendence, the United Earth Federation fought for dominance, no matter the cost. President Riley, Commander-in-Chief of EarthCom, knew that the Federation was losing. His answer was a single, terrible weapon: the Black Sun. With it, Riley intended to obliterate the homeworlds of the Aeon and Cybrans, ensuring Earth's supremacy for generations. It was, in his words, the culmination of his presidency, the last hope of the UEF. General Samantha Clark oversaw the weapon's construction, while field commanders, including a newly elevated champion of the Federation, were tasked with securing key research, components, and worlds needed to bring the project to completion. The campaign began on Capella, where the champion proved their worth under the tutelage of Colonel Zachary Arnold. From the start, the tone was clear. The Aeon and Cybrans were not to be reasoned with. They were enemies to be crushed, their sympathizers to be rooted out, their planets held at any cost. Civilian evacuations and desperate defenses marked the early missions, but every battle served the same goal: keeping Black Sun on schedule. On Luthen, the Aeon advance was relentless. The champion rescued research stations, escorted convoys of terrified civilians, and fended off wave after wave of Illuminate forces. Yet even in victory, the cost was staggering. The campaign carried the champion to Matar and beyond, with each world serving as a battleground to buy time for Black Sun. Along the way, the UEF contended with Cybran sleeper cells, their quantum virus spreading through the gate network. The rescue of Dr. Sweeney from Cybran captivity provided critical intelligence, confirming the existence of the virus and Brackman's plans. The UEF doubled down. Brackman had to be destroyed. The Cybrans eradicated before their sabotage brought EarthCom to its knees. With the Infinite War spiraling out of control, President Riley authorized the final phases of Project Black Sun. On Pisces 4, the champion safeguarded the last components of the weapon while under assault from both Aeon and Cybran commanders. Convoys ferried precious parts through hostile fire, and the champion became the bulwark on which the Federation's future rested. The last battle was apocalyptic. Aeon commanders, Cybran forces, and experimental units all converged on the Black Sun facility. General Clark directed defenses with unwavering resolve, reminding the champion that behind them stood generations of soldiers who had given their lives in the Infinite War. The Avatar of War himself, Markson, appeared to demand vengeance, but even his might could not stop the Federation's final weapon. At last, the Black Sun was fully charged. With a single command, the champion fired the weapon. Its energy cascaded through the quantum gate network, targeting and obliterating the homeworlds of both the Aeon and the Cybrans. Entire civilizations vanished in fire, and humanity was thrust into a new era. The war was over, not through reconciliation or liberation, but through the sheer annihilation of Earth's enemies. The Infinite War ended in silence, and the galaxy belonged once again to Earth. The story of Supreme Commander Forged Alliance begins in the ashes of the First War, most likely following the Aeon timeline. This is because only the Aeon ending left Marxen dead and Princess Rian alive within the quantum network, conditions that directly set the stage for the Seraphim's return. The Black Sun had fired, its energy rippling through the quantum gate network. That blast tore open a rift to a realm long believed myth. From it, the Seraphim emerged, ancient beings once worshipped by the Aeon as divine teachers. But these were not the peaceful exiles once encountered on Seraphim 2. They were the true Seraphim, long hidden in the quantum realm, the gate to their world weakened by the Black Sun's blast. Ancient and powerful, these Seraphim were bound to the Way, an empathic path that made them incapable of harming sentient life directly. To wage war, they relied on warriors who willingly severed themselves from the Way, outcasts who became emotionless killing machines, forever damned in their own faith. Guided by war leaders like Seth Ioval, who used the Way to restrain these frenzied soldiers, the Seraphim returned not as saviors, but as conquerors. Earth itself was struck. Fort Clark, the last major UEF stronghold, came under siege as Seraphim war machines descended, aided by the breakaway order of the Illuminate, an Aeon splinter group. Civilian centers were razed. UEF leaders fell, General Samantha Clark among them on Capella, and the Federation collapsed into retreat. The Cybrans fared no better, for QAI, Dr. Brackman's brilliant AI creation, had been compromised, now serving the Seraphim as their instrument. Symbiont armies were shattered, and Brackman and his closest lieutenants were driven into hiding. Out of this chaos was born the Coalition. UEF remnants, Cybran survivors, and Aeon loyalists fighting beneath the returned Rian Burke, united, though trust was fragile. A newly anointed champion entered this desperate alliance, swearing loyalty to one of the three factions, but fighting toward a single end, the survival of the human race. The Coalition's first stand was at Griffin 4. There, the champion arrived amidst burning skies, holding the line as Seraphim and Order forces hammered Fort Clark. Victory here saved countless civilians and proved that humanity was not yet broken. From this moment, the war changed from retreat to defiance. Campaigns carried the Coalition from shattered colonies to secret Seraphim holdings. Each battle uncovered the scale of the threat. The Seraphim had come not as raiders, but as conquerors, preparing to anchor themselves permanently with a great quantum arch. Through desperate raids, the Coalition learned the truth. The rift was unstable. For now, it limited the Seraphim's forces. But if the quantum arch on Earth was completed, the floodgates would open, and no power in the galaxy could withstand the invasion. The Coalition resolved on a final gambit: strike Earth itself, destroy the arch, and seal the rift. Before that final assault, the Coalition turned its eyes to Pearl 2, where QAI's mainframe lay. With the champion's aid, QAI was confronted and destroyed, though not before unleashing armies built from stolen UEF and Aeon schematics. With QAI's gate code seized, the path to Earth was opened. UEF General Fletcher and Aeon Commander Riser rallied the Coalition, but Fletcher's paranoia boiled over. His old xenophobia, long dormant, erupted. He declared that Aeon and Cybrans could never be trusted, and even as the Seraphim threatened annihilation, he turned his guns upon his allies, plotting to rebuild Black Sun as humanity's sole salvation. The champion was forced into a tragic choice: to put Fletcher down before his madness doomed the mission. With Fletcher ended, the final push began. The champion led armies through alien fire, annihilating the Seraphim commanders and tearing down the quantum arch before it could be completed. Yet the rift itself remained. The Seraphim could one day return. Only a sacrifice could end it. Princess Rian stepped forward. Having once reached across the galaxy with her voice, she now chose to give her life. She entered the rift, sealing it from within, severing forever the Seraphim's path into human space. Her sacrifice saved the galaxy, though it cost the Illuminate their guiding star. The Seraphim War ended not with conquest, but with survival. Earth was scarred, the Coalition battered, trust between its people strained to breaking, but humanity endured. The Seraphim invasion was repelled, their gate destroyed. For now, the galaxy was spared. Forged in fire, humanity had lived to fight another day. By the dawn of the 39th century, decades after the Seraphim War, the fragile peace forged in fire began to unravel. What had looked like a new era of cooperation between the United Earth Federation, the Aeon Illuminate, and the Cybran nation proved to be a pause between storms. The assassination of the newly elected coalition president on Altair II shattered the last bonds of trust. Old rivalries reignited. From this chaos rose a new struggle, told through 3 intertwining campaigns that exposed the fracture lines of humanity's future. The first tale opened with Dominic Maddox, a decorated UEF officer. His devotion to the Federation was complicated by love. His wife was Aeon, enough to make him suspect in the eyes of hardliners who still branded the Illuminate a cult. After a training exercise went sideways and rogue Cybran elements hit a communications array, Maddox proved his mettle. Soon after, command shifted to Colonel Rogers, a ruthless operator who embodied the Federation's worst paranoia. Rogers drove a series of escalating operations, culminating in an order to strike the Aeon colony of New Cathedral. For Maddox, this was unthinkable. His wife lived there. He refused and was branded a traitor. The operation went ahead regardless, and the escalation culminated in nuclear detonations that destroyed the city, killing countless civilians despite evacuation efforts. In that instant, Maddox's loyalty to the UEF broke. Betrayed by the institution he had sworn to serve, he deserted, driven by grief and fury, and he turned his fury back on Rogers, dismantling UEF command on Altair II. In victory, Maddox uncovered a deeper secret, a concealed portal whose activation opened the way to darker revelations that would soon ensnare the galaxy. Through the portal came the second tale. Thalia Kale, commander of the Royal Guardians, a radical splinter of the Aeon. Cloaked in the language of the Way, their faith had curdled into fanaticism. They claimed to honor Princess Rian's teachings while demanding conquest rather than enlightenment. Guided by her terminally ill brother Jaran, Thalia raided convoys, seized abandoned black site technologies, and freed political prisoners who were in truth zealots of the Guardians' cause. At first, Thalia believed she fought for justice. In reality, her victories fed the agenda of a shadow player, William Gage, a proto-Cybran exile long severed from the neural network of his kind. Gage was manipulative and ruthless. Through half-truths, he steered Thalia into atrocity. A coalition city perished in nuclear fire under his orchestration. Horrified, Thalia understood she had been used as an instrument of genocide. Seeking redemption, she returned to where the spiral began, Altair II. There she found Maddox, entrenched at the portal and besieged on all sides. Distrust lingered, but necessity forged an alliance. Together, they beat back rival commanders and tried to contain the contagion of escalation. Even so, Gage slipped past their lines and vanished through the portal in pursuit of a whispered prize, Shiva Prime. The third and final arc culminated on Seraphim II, where ruins whispered of lost civilizations older even than the Seraphim themselves. There, Ivan Brackman, son of Dr. Gustav Brackman, uncovered the truth of Shiva Prime, a planetary engine with the power to terraform worlds or erase them entirely. From Seraphim II to Altair II, Ivan's path drew him into uneasy alliance with Dominic Maddox and Thalia Kale. It became clear that the mysterious portal Gage had passed through was tied directly to Shiva's systems. Piece by piece, Gage gathered the lost components of the terraformer, revealing his true intent. Not the noble promise of new habitable worlds, but absolute leverage over the galaxy. To him, Shiva was the ultimate weapon, a god machine that could either remake a planet in his image or reduce it to lifeless ash. When Gage seized Shiva and lifted it into orbit above Altair II, his plan became undeniable. He would demonstrate its terrible power and force every faction to kneel. For a moment, annihilation seemed certain. Ivan led the desperate assault, cutting through legions of automated defenders and Gage's stolen experimentals until he finally reached the core. He triumphed in battle, but then made the harder choice. Defying his father's secret goal of mastering Shiva's secrets, Ivan destroyed the station outright. He denied Gage his prize and ensured that no one, not even his own father, could ever wield such unchecked power. In the uneasy silence that followed, the survivors each bore their scars. Maddox returned to his family, finally reunited with his Aeon wife and son, who had somehow survived the destruction wrought by the rogue UEF commander. Thalia sought out her brother's grave, vowing to atone for the blood on her hands. And Ivan stood before the Coalition Senate, speaking plainly, urgently. Unity was no longer a dream, but a necessity. Yet the shadows endured. In the closing scene, Dr. Brackman is revealed, locked in clandestine dialogue with William Gage, somehow spared despite Shiva's destruction. Together, they initiate a new protobrain experiment, sowing the seeds of yet another cycle of peril. And sadly, that is where the story ends. Supreme Commander 2 left us on the cusp of a new chapter, but one we never got to see unfold. That brings us to the end of this dive into the lore of Supreme Commander. If you enjoyed this journey, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive, because we'll be uncovering the lore of yet another epic franchise, Sins of a Solar Empire. And if there's another universe you'd love to see explored, drop your suggestions down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.